Hi everyone, it's Nicole Spohr and welcome to another Felt Stitch and Create video. Today we're going to be putting together the Charming Witch hat. This is a August 2026 release from Spellbinders, and this makes a cute little witch hat, of course. There are some options for this, including not using the layering piece at all, or using those layering pieces for other things. If you check out the Fright Night Feline video, one of the other SKUs for this release, you can also incorporate some of those stars and moons for some other things. In the bonus project, I show you another idea. We are going to be putting together the Charming Witch hat with the star on it. And we're going to start by stitching the banner onto the hat. I like to start these videos with the inspiration, stitching the project as is to make a felt, in this case, an ornament, but it could just be a little dough bowl filler or other kind of decoration. However you like to decorate. I like to do a Halloween tree, and so I like to use mine to decorate a Halloween tree. So we are going to stitch this the hat border in place. You want to do this on the front and the back. If you don't care about the back, you don't have to. However, the hat piece is going to have the stitching holes in it, so I do recommend going ahead and doing that. When you do the back of the hat, make sure you flip the banner to the back side, because we're going to be placing our hat pieces back to back. There is only one hat die for the hat shape itself, so you really are going to want to stitch those to the front and the back. If you're only using the front to stitch this onto a flat project, which I'll show you here at the second half of the video, then you're only going to need one hat piece. I've got two hat pieces, two hat bands. I've die cut the stitching star from the front panel of my hat, and I have stitched die cut, the star itself, and that's going to line up with the front panel of the hat. I'm going up and down every stitching hole along the edge, and then I'm going to come back to fill in those spaces. Then I'm also going to do that along the top. Something I want to mention, you're going to see on my second hat, or in the second hat photo at the beginning of this video, that I did do kind of a decorative stitch along the hat. It doesn't exactly match up, but I was able to kind of finagle it so that it kind of has more of a cross-stitchy type of effect and look. Have fun with it, try different things, see what you like. Also, for that second hat, the black hat with the moon on it, the florals are all from the Witch Boot Felt Stitch and Create die SKU, so you can definitely mix and match your dies. And also in the second half of the video, when I do the embroidery hoop decoration, you will see the hat used and embellished with those florals. So we're going to just tie this off into a little knot on the back, and then we are going to go ahead and stitch the other half of this hat band. Okay, so I'm showing you how they're going to go back to back. After I have stitched both bands on the front and back of the hat, it is time to stitch the star in place. I grabbed some yellow embroidery floss, and we are simply going to follow these little lines out to each spoke of the star. This hat I did stitch in a beautiful purple color with yellow and black accents. I was hoping it would show up a little bit better on camera than stitching the black hat, since our floss does disappear a little bit into the edge. And I know a lot of you love purple for Halloween, so this is a great little witchy hat in the purple colors. And even though I didn't add florals to this one, you could definitely do that, and I think it would be stunning. I am following the same steps that I always do for felt stitching. I'm using, I think, 2 strands of floss. 2 or 3 is generally kind of my sweet spot, and I stitch up and down every other stitching hole, and then I come back. So I'm going out to each tip of that star up and down, and when I get to the end, then I simply reverse it, and that is filling in all of those extra stitches. We're going to go ahead and knot this on the back. Keep in mind, you can add seed beads, sequins, buttons, all kinds of extra goodies that you might already have in your stash to decorate your hat. Okay, now that we have our front and back pieces, it is time to stitch the hat together. It is pretty straightforward. I would say it probably, out of most of the different collections, it has the least amount of extra little pieces, but it works so well and can be used with so many of our other Felt Stitch and Create dies. Now we are going to, I'm going to start down here at the bottom. I also have a length of baker's twine, black and white baker's twine, that I have put a little knot in the end. When we get to the tip of the hat, I will be sandwiching that between the 2 layers to make a hanger, so this becomes an ornament. You definitely do not have to do that, and if you would like, you can always take a doll making needle and some crochet thread or other thin twine and thread it through when you're finished and just knot it up at the top. If you want to hide and bury your knot inside of your ornament, I recommend sandwiching it when you get to the top of the ornament. So we're going to stitch up and down all the way around. Just like I always do at this point, you do start in between the 2 layers so that when you end, you also come out in between the 2 layers. If your floss is not long enough, I do recommend going ahead and stitching a section and then reversing and coming back and filling in those holes and knotting it, which is what I do most of the time. I kind of like doing it that way rather than having a super long length of embroidery floss and it getting knotted constantly. In fact, here I've got a little knot here. So that's just kind of my personal preference, but please do it however you like to do your stitching. I don't recommend a traditional back stitch because you will end up with long, messy stitches on the back. If you want your back to look exactly like the front, go up and down every stitching hole just like this, and then go back the other way to fill those in. I like to knot in between the 2 layers of felt because when you knot and then stitch or cut close to that knot, it buries the knot in between the 2 layers, giving you a beautiful seamless look. By placing your twine in between the layers as you're stitching, you're going to secure it and that knot is not going to pull through. I've left about a 1 to 1.5 inch opening along the bottom here, and I'm going to take very small tufts of wool roving. You can also use polyester fiberfill, and I'm going to use this little tool to gently push that down to the end, and you want to use little amounts. I have found that if you overstuff with felt projects, it is going to tax the seams and the chance of ripping becomes greater. I do love the plush look of this. I've also shared ideas in the past of die cutting some thin batting and using that as your stuffing, but whether you use wool roving, polyester fiberfill, or whatever you use, I do recommend don't overstuff your item. It will tax and pull those seams and the chance of ripping becomes greater. So just stuff it till the point where it's nice and plush but not too full, if that makes sense. So I have used this little tool. You can also use a bamboo stick. I've linked the tool down below. And then you're going to finish stitching this up. So you're going to close up the seam, reverse it, and fill in all of those stitching holes. At this point, be very careful that you're lining up the holes, and you also want to make sure that it's not pulling too much. If it is, don't be afraid to pull a little bit of that stuffing out, but look how adorable our hat looks, nice and full like this. I would love for you guys to comment what your favorite stuffing of choice is and what your favorite SKU from the Halloween Felt Stitch and Create collection is. Do you do a Halloween tree? Let me know all of the things down in the comments. I love hearing from you guys, and I'd love to know what you're going to stitch first. There is a I Want It All bundle available with this collection. And if you purchase, you do get a discount on purchasing all 4 of these SKUs, which is a great deal. You can definitely mix and match all of the things, and it is very fun. For some of my other projects I'm sharing, I've also delved back into my previous collections from Spellbinders. A lot of the florals and things are going to work. In fact, I did use a couple that you're going to see on the bonus project here in a little bit. As we're filling in the rest of these stitches along this bottom edge to clean it up, and you'll notice I flip it back and forth, double checking a lot, because I definitely want to make sure that I'm not going rogue and just stitching wherever. I am going to come back to right where I started, come out in between the 2 layers of felt with my needle. I do stitch with a number 5 sharp tip needle. Some things you might be piercing not through die cut stitching holes, but through the felt itself. So a sharp tip needle is definitely handy. We're going to come out in between the 2 layers, right where we started in between those 2 layers. We're going to do a little knot and then trim close to that knot to finish off our ornament. We've already got our ornament hanger in there. We're not adding anything additional to this one, so this one is going to be all finished. Now for my next project today, I wanted to share something else different. You could make a banner like I did with the Patchwork Ghost. You could stitch this hat onto the Fright Night feline if you wanted to. All kinds of things. I decided I love an embroidery hoop decoration. I've got a piece of Tim Holtz fabric here. I love that it's a grungy kind of neutral. I've got tons of fun florals, not only from the Witch Boot, but from, I believe, the Cheeky Apple collection, and maybe the Pumpkin House as well. And what we're going to do is we are going to assemble some of our florals. I've got the little flower center from the Cheeky Apple here that I folded in half, secured with some glue. I will link to the Cheeky Apple video at the end of this one. So I've got a little hot glue that I'm using for this video to secure that. I like using my craft tweezers to create that. And maybe I didn't. Maybe I used the piece for this. Anyhow, we're using these florals from the Witch Boot, and I'm going to glue and create my flowers. The Witch Boot tutorial is going to give you a very detailed tutorial on how to assemble these flowers. You're going to use them on everything. They're fabulous. Okay, so I decided to do another layer. I die cut another one of these florals that I'm simply going to wrap around here and secure with my hot glue. If you do not do hot glue, you can stitch these. I prefer hot glue, but please use whatever works best for you. I'm generally not super patient, so hot glue is quick and easy, way quicker than a liquid adhesive or stitching. Okay, so as I assemble each of these, I'm going to set them over to the side, but what I want to show is that I have this piece of fabric and I've got my hat. We are going to stitch that hat directly to the fabric, and then we are going to be placing this in an embroidery hoop. And it makes a cute little decor piece that you can hang on the wall, tuck into a display, into a bowl, whatever you want to do with that. Okay, so this is the Cheeky Apple right here, the flower from that, I believe. So I'm putting the little flower center in, just another way to incorporate. I wanted to do this really pretty floral next to my witch hat. I have 3 of those. I think I used them all. We shall see. And then I've got my little flower from this set, which is it's a tinier version of the flower center from Cheeky Apple, if I'm not mistaken. And then we've got the wonderful little rolled flowers. Rolled flowers are totally fun if you want something dimensional. And as you can see, they come in the Witch Boot set, but they work perfectly with this. If you want to give your Fright Night feline a little floral, you can. If you want to give your patchwork boo a floral, you could totally do that as well. So have fun with these rolled flowers. That long skinny piece, I know I've mentioned this in the Witch Boot tutorial, that is not a stem. That is a rolled floral. So it's going to give you, instead of a loopy design or a scallop design, etc., it's going to give you a beautiful rolled floral that you can use on its own or inside of the flowers. It's made to work inside the flowers, but you can definitely customize and use it how you want. I tried to do rich, beautiful fall colors for my flowers. Again, I'm holding the end with my tweezers and wrapping it around. If you've never tried this before, first of all, it really helps keep your fingers out of the hot glue, and it helps you get a nice tight roll for your florals. This is going to be the center, I believe, of our lavender floral, and it looks so good. So I'm going to put a little glue, and then we're just simply going to wrap the little scallop around here, and we might do a couple of these to give more petals for our flower, but I like to do one at a time, kind of reevaluate, and you can always die cut and add more for our little flowers. Look how cute that little flower center looks. Yep, I definitely want to do 2 on this one. Okay, so we're going to wrap that one around. You can snip it if you don't want things as long. Don't be afraid to customize your felt either. You can always trim that down a bit if you prefer. Look at that pretty little flower. When I remove my thumb and you see the little flower center, it looks so stinking cute. I just love it. Okay, so we've got our florals, and I have another floral here with the little button center. I'm not sure if I use that one or not. Let's go ahead and thread up our, I'm going to use some pearl cottons, I think, for stitching this, number 5 pearl cotton, and that eliminates the need to have more than one strand of floss. And we're going to stitch the band on our witch hat. Now, if you're going to stitch on another piece of fabric, it is easier to do the layering pieces before you stitch it onto the backer piece. So even though I've got my fabric here, I am going to stitch the band on my hat. I'm going to stitch the moon on my hat, and then the only thing I'm going to stitch to the fabric is the outline of the hat itself. Do yourself a favor. Don't try to pierce through that fabric. You can definitely do it. Have I messed up and done that before? Oh, 100%. But it is so much easier to stitch any of the layering elements on the main piece and then stitch the final piece just once onto that backing fabric. So that is how I do both this and the Fright Night feline. Both of these are going to be very similar in that I am going to stitch all the layering pieces and then just stitch the final outline shape to my backing fabric. I was really wanting something with a little bit of pattern to it, but I didn't want it to be patterned. Does that make sense? So that's why I picked this Tim Holtz grungy fabric that looks like it's had a whole bunch of stuff spilled on it. I will link to this exact fabric down below because I used it not only for this piece, but the pillow I made with the Fright Night feline. Okay, I have stitched the band of my hat on. Now I'm going to stitch my moon, lining that up with the stitching holes. I did add the stitching holes. I love that this die allows you to choose whether you want the moon, the star, or nothing at all. That gives you way more possibilities than simply having to use it with one shape or another every single time. So that basically gives you 3 different options, and then you can choose how you want to customize from there. All right, we're going to stitch up and down every other stitching hole and then come back. And then it's time for the fun part where we start making our embroidery hoop. So for the fabric and inside of my embroidery hoop, I believe this is a 7-inch embroidery hoop. I will find one and link it down in the description below. It is just a generic, cheap embroidery hoop. Nothing, you know, super fancy. You can stain it, you can paint it if you want to. You could wrap it up in ribbon, you could wrap it in fabric. I did nothing. I left mine just as is. I'm going to line up my witch hat where I want it in the center of my fabric. I didn't even cut my fabric super nice because you'll see here in a little bit. I left it bigger than the hoop itself. I did use some straight pins to hold it in place. I definitely do not want this shifting because I need an equal amount of space all the way around my element because we want it to be centered in the hoop. So I did just pin mine in place, and as I because your thread is going to get tangled. Well, my thread gets tangled. I will remove those pins as I'm stitching and as I start getting tangled up in them as I'm stitching, but I really do think it's worth it. You probably, if you wanted to, could use a fusible on the back of the hat piece and then fuse it in place. You can definitely stitch through that super easy. I might try that the next time instead of having to fiddle with pins. You know, make it your own. Do whatever works the best and easiest for you. But we're simply going to stitch all the way around. And even though you're not really going to see the back of this like you would with a two-sided plush ornament, I am going to do the same technique of stitching up and down every stitching hole. Okay, I'm going to thread that through the back of some of my stitches to tie this off instead of making a knot. Look how adorable our little hat is. And I think, maybe I left it every other stitching as a finish instead of going up and down each stitch. So at the tip of the hat, I have these little dimensional jingle bells. I will link to these as well. And I went ahead and stitched that in place, and then I will just knot this on the back to secure. I want to add all of the embellishments to this. I love a little bell or a little rusty bell on the tip of the hat. One of my ornaments also has that. Now I'm going to take a piece of thin batting. I'm going to lay it back behind, and we are going to position the hat, the fabric with the hat, and we are going to push our embroidery hoop one piece underneath both layers, one on top. When it is centered where we want, I want to tighten that really, really well. And then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to leave maybe a 1/2 inch all the way around. So I put it in my hoop before I ever cut it. You can leave the edge kind of decorative like this if you want. However, I am going to lace mine on the back so it all pulls to the back of the fabric. You could also hot glue it if you do not want to lace. So I went ahead and laced that off camera. And now comes my favorite part, the finishing embellishing, because as cute as the witch hat is, you add some flowers to it and it makes it 10 times cuter. I am first going to stitch these leaves together. I've die cut 6 of them. We're going to stitch them back to back using some green floss. Same thing as before. I like to start down near the base of the leaf in between the 2 layers and stitch all the way around. You could just stitch them to the fabric if you wanted to, but I wanted my leaves to be dimensional, so I do recommend die cutting 2 and stitching them together. You get the great little stitching detail to it, and then they look as beautiful on the back as they do on the front. So let's go ahead and stitch all 3 of our leaves. So 6 layers, 3 leaves. And then we will come out the same place where we started, tie a little knot. So in between the 2 layers, snip it close, and we will do this for the other leaves for our finished piece. And then we're going to do a little floral design, and that's going to be gluing all of our flowers and our leaves, our stitched leaves, to our embroidery hoop into the witch hat to decorate. Now, what I thought I was going to do, I did change my mind just a little bit. So I will build that floral arrangement as we start incorporating all of the things. I do want to start with one of the bigger florals, and then we're going to kind of just tuck all of the other ones in until we have it the way we want it to look. Okay, so I'm going to grab my hot glue gun and we're going to start building the floral design. I like to put a little drop of hot glue back behind the center of the flower and then glue it down. That way we can tuck in additional florals. And I'm kind of playing around with these. Again, I might make some adjustments. I might leave a few things off. We'll just see how it ends up. But I would suggest laying them all out before you start gluing. Figure out what you like. Like, that is way too much on that side of the hat. Even though I love all of these flowers, we need to take some stuff away. Or maybe we need to adjust it and move it over to the other side where it feels like that might look a little bit cuter. Have fun with it. You're going to notice in the finished design, I ended up putting 3 on the right side, 2 flowers on the left, I believe. And then I also made a little bow out of silk ribbon. You can grab these silk ribbons in my shop. I'll link to this one down below. I think this one is rust, although I might be wrong. I'll put the exact color down in the show notes. And then I hot glued it in place. I made the bow with the bow tool from Chantal's 141 design. I left some long tails. And then we're building our floral arrangement. We're tucking our leaves in. And I also have some decorative hat pins that I grabbed off of Amazon. One has like a little crystal tip, one has a pearl tip, and that is going to look amazing tucked in to our florals. So our witch hat is going to have some hat pins in it too. Okay, I kind of think I like this better. I think we're going to pull one of those white flowers off if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember. Maybe I leave them both on there. I don't think I end up using the orange flower with the button is what I think I ended up not using. But this makes such a fun Halloween decoration, and I will just stick those hat pins in the finished design. Since they're nice and sharp, you can just tuck those in, and you could tie a ribbon around the little loop in the top and hang it, or do whatever you want to do. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for the Charming Witch Hat Felt Stitch and Create tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed this. All the supplies used to create these projects are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.